Item 44, Member Rummel.
Item 44 is a resolution seeking amendatory veto to Senate Bill number 2544. During the final days of the 2018 legislative session, Senate Bill 2544 was introduced through multiple maneuvers that circumvented a thorough and transparent process that would require the bill to a referendum question to be placed on the November general election ballot. We are seeking a gubernatorial amendatory veto, which places the referendum question on the next possible election ballot to all counties. There are three issues here in my mind as I've spoken at Finance. The first issue is a fairness issue. There are 60 other counties that look just like us, that the chairman appoints the person, and we are singled out again in legislation that does not allow the other counties to do the same thing. The second part of this is a legality question in my mind. They are singling out Lake County. Legislation says that it must be across all counties that have a meeting of that requirement, and so I believe this is, again, singular legislation that's pointed at Lake County. And finally, which is mostly my opinion, this is the third time in 5 years an employee of the county has been attacked by the legislature. The first time was with our clerk, the second time was with our county chairman, and now this. I believe that this has to stop. We have to work together with Springfield to get good legislation, and I know the chairman will speak to this in a minute, but we really need to move ourselves forward and do what's right for the citizens. No one here does not support having a referendum on the ballot. It's just the way it got here and how it was done, with nothing illegal. What they did was not illegal, but what they certainly did was a lot of backroom maneuvering so that this could not be fully vetted. We could not input into this and give some good improvements to this legislation that should be happening. So I therefore move to put item number 44 on the floor.
All right, motion by Rummel, second by Calabrese. We have a number of people that have signed up for public comment, and I just want to introduce the item slightly, a little bit more, in saying that the legislature and all of the county board members in our 102 counties swear an oath to uphold the Illinois Constitution. It's the first thing we do in office. And the Illinois Constitution is clear in saying that the legislature shall make no law that is so specific to one entity or jurisdiction when a broader law is practical. The sponsor has utilized the argument, while I find it flawed, his argument is that because I'm a peer elected county board member, elected by this body, and that the county board, the chief county assessment officer is appointed by the chairman and then voted on by the board, that voters don't have accountability, direct accountability over that position. I find that to be false because this body votes on that appointment. So 100% of Lake County residents get the opportunity to have accountability through their county board members on this position. But even if that were the logic, the sponsor, asserts that that's a problem. There are 60 other counties that are just like Lake, where you have a peer-selected county board chair, as Member Rummel mentioned, and a county board appointed chief county assessment officer. But even if that weren't the case, and we do put this to referendum, which I think voters have the right to make this decision, then winner, winner, chicken dinner, this person doesn't get the same authority under Illinois law to have consolidated assessment authority as the other chief county assessment, the elected assessors would have under statute. I think that's a problem. The sponsors of this legislation have stated that it's an opportunity for us to lower property taxes. I think Committee of the Whole, I didn't hear one member say that they believed that this was going to lower property taxes. And I don't believe in a legislature where the speaker has made his money off of property assessments, that's what his law firm does, property assessment appeals, that injecting partisan politics and campaign contributions into this process is going to make it any more fair. And so I would like to see, frankly, that The legislature, as has been mentioned by some members through the process, if the legislature choose not to come back to work before the election, that we should put the right question on the ballot that actually asks this in a meaningful way, that doesn't single out Illinois counties. So in addition to this action, I think that it's important to share with the board that I intend to bring an advisory question forth later this month for action through our normal committee process to ask the same question that the legislature is willing to ask, but without the false political pretense, to say, shall the office of Chief Assessment Officer of Lake County be elected beginning with the 2020 general election and granted the same consolidated assessment authority as other county elected assessors? I just think it's important that I be upfront in kind of sharing that. But that gives us an opportunity to put the question before the voters in a timely fashion. The legislature can take it from there. And with that, I would entertain public comment, and then we'll have board member discussion.
Jerry Barr. And just for everybody who's coming to speak, please refrain to the best of your ability from being repetitive or redundant or cumulative. If somebody has commented on a certain item, please go on to something else, okay? Thank you. You have 3 minutes. I will give you a warning at 1.
Okay. Good morning. First, I'd like to address some of the comments made at the committee meeting by board members who ignored the public concerns and had made up their minds, excuse me, prior to the meeting to vote in favor of requesting a veto by the governor of SB 2544. Why is this bill only for Lake County? Because Lake County is the only county allowing their appointed assessor to reverse changes and corrections to assessments based on changing market conditions and even actual physical changes to properties. Lake County is also the only county where township assessors must turn their books in by July 15th. This change in legislation was done without input from the assessors at the request of the CCAO. We knew nothing about it. So I would say that was special legislation. It doesn't make sense that the administrative body of the process, which is the CCAO, needs more time than the township assessors who actually value the properties. Many county board members disputed Mr. Morris, who correctly stated that his subdivision would have lower property taxes if their properties were assessed at 33 1/3% of their value rather than the higher assessment they received due to the across-the-board factor applied to their township. It's true, their taxes would be lower. The simple answer given by the county, appeal your assessment. Why not just give them a correct assessment in the first place? Why should they have to go through an appeal? And why would the county continue to spend money on the appeal process that is not necessary if assessments are correct, uniform, and follow the statutes? Look at any other collar counties, and you will see Lake County in the lead for the most appeals year after year. Wasted money on all of these appeals.
1 minute.
This is not special legislation. 30 other counties elect their assessor now. But that shouldn't matter. Our board should be concerned with Lake County and not trying to take away the right to vote on this important position. As one county board member stated at the last meeting, we need to stand behind our employee. I believe you are elected to stand for the people in your district, and that should be the top priority for all of you. It was also stated that the counties who have an elected assessor have consolidated all assessment functions into the county. Not true. And I have a list here that I can read off, but I don't have enough time. Assessing property is the only elected position that has educational qualifications, including at the township level. So yeah, people that are voted for CCAO have to be, okay.
Thank you. Susan Warter. You have 3 minutes. I'll give you a warning at 1.
Okay, thanks. Good morning. Although some people are specifically concerned about this specific assessor, and I know that there's a concern that's been voiced multiple times that it's an attack on your employee or an attack on your assessor. I think it's really important for the board to remember that this is a referendum not on a specific employee. It's a referendum on whether or not to let the taxpayers make a choice about how we want to have this person selected. Would we like to continue to have you guys, our board that we elect, make the choice? Or do we want to let taxpayers directly make the choice? And although Chairman Lawler described it as direct because we vote for you, it's not, that's not what it means to be directly making a choice. And we have a problem of gerrymandering at the state of Illinois, which I've talked a lot about in November. We, in Lake County, have a similar gerrymandering problem that we're not addressing right now, but that prevents it from being direct vote. And whether or not you're concerned about gerrymandering, it's still not a direct vote. And you should remember still, most people aren't concerned about this one employee, but the idea.
I'm sorry, can you state your name and where you live?
My name is Susan Malter. I live in Lincolnshire.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, I just thank you for your time and for your service.
Denise Neufeld, Grays Lake. Three minutes, I'll give you a warning at 1.
I'm Denise Neufeld, and I live in Carillon North in Grays Lake, Illinois. The Lake County Board has 2 choices this morning on item 44. Either give the voters the right to vote on either electing or appointing the Lake County Assessor in November or not. I hear the latest argument against SB 2544 is a question of the constitutionality of the referendum, since it only applies to Lake County. Time and again, over the years, this board has asked for the legislature to approve laws that only apply to Lake County. For example, SB 2452 amended the Sanitary District of 1932 to allow for Lake County to take over the Lakes Regional Sanitary District. Also in DuPage and Will counties, they have a direct election of their county board chairman, and Lake County does not. In DuPage County, they elect forest preserve commissioners who are separate from the county board members. But in Lake County, when you're elected to the county board, you are both a county board member and a forest preserve commissioner. This constitutional issue is a phony argument against the public's right to vote. Just because some of you don't like the bill's sponsor is not a reason enough to deny us the right to vote, or this phony thing about the process. You don't care about the process. You really don't. Saying you don't like the legislative process is phony. Do the right thing today and vote no on the chairman's phony resolution asking for an amendatory veto. Do not deny us the right to vote in November. Thank you.
Clyde McLemore. Mr. McLemore? Now or never, sir. Let's go, please. You have 3 minutes. I'll give you a warning at 1.
That flash is really distracting, by the way.
What you say?
Just so you're aware.
What you say?
I'll give you 3. You got 3 minutes. I'll give you a warning at 1.
I know the rules. Good morning.
Okay.
Board members, I am Clyde McLemore, the founder of the Lake County chapter of Black Lives Matter. I am here this morning on behalf of this bill which has been voted on and sent to the governor, SB 2544. The people of Lake County have spoken. I attended the community meetings, and I researched the advantage and the disadvantage of this bill. Through my research with my team, it's a little savings for property owners, not much, but what it does is it takes the control away from this board. By placing an assessor allows the citizens to vote for one. The benefit of that is transparency. Listen to the people who voted y'all in. When you ran for office, you all promised that it would be transparency. The board has failed Lake County citizens, in my opinion. Everyone isn't outspoken or honest as I am. I refuse to let you feel comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. In my research, I look at each one of y'all voting records. Bill Durkin, District 8, vote against his party. Don't keep selling out District 8. Your job is to bring the people's conscience here when you vote, not your BS. Diane Hewitt, District 2, my district. Several times you have voted and been in conflict with the district. I consider you a personal friend, and friends don't let friends fall. Arm yourself and stand with the citizen who voted you in. Mary Cunningham, District 9. I hear you say many times, this is my district. If it is, represent it. Many of your votes has been against the district and the people. I heard you say, this is my chairman. This man don't give a damn about you. Don't stand and take a bullet for him. If you vote, if the vote don't represent your district, then vote against it and be the lone voter. At least you stand your ground. May God be upon her, but the late Audrey Nixon fought on this board. And upon her death, she really never forgave you, Mary, for voting to split her district up. But she was a calm woman who just dealt with it. Back to the issue at hand.
Point of order.
Every township,
Mr.
every township assessor, I ain't got to lie. And this my time. You get
Yes,
yours.
but our board rules, I find it
look here. If the truth hurts, it hurts. I'm gonna be honest. I talked to Audrey myself. You know what I'm saying?
We're not going to invoke the dead and disrespect the memory of our former colleague in this. Yes, we're not going to do that. So close to Audrey. Everybody is entitled to their 3 minutes, and everybody is entitled to their 3 minutes, but we're not making this conversation personal. We're going to keep it professional and based on people's opinions. Thank you.
Who she is.
Sir, you need to sit down. 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 And Member Cunningham, I think let's just get on to the next speaker. Everybody is entitled to their 3 minutes under board rules, but we're not going to make this conversation personal. It can be about voting records. It can be about that. But just so you know, we're not making this personal. Member Maine.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to remind people that the item at hand is this and not other items.
Correct.
So anyone speaking needs to speak on this item.
That is an effective point of order. Thank you. Next speaker.
Richard Johns.
We're not going to, let's get through the public comment. I think we're all right. Thank you.
Mr. Johns, please, you have 3 minutes. I'll give you a warning at 1. Please try not to be repetitive.
My name is Richard Johns. I'm a resident of Grays Lake, Illinois, and I want the right to vote on electing the Lake County Assessor. I would hope the county board doesn't use this clout to deny the voters of Lake County the opportunity to decide if the county assessor should be elected. For 2 years, the townhomes in Carolina North have been overassessed by the Lake County assessor, forcing senior citizens, most on fixed incomes, to pay $250 to $400 more in property taxes than the law requires. Rather than taking our evidence of overassessment and making any across-the-board adjustment, he is making us file hundreds of appeals, even though research shows he has assessed our townhomes at 36.92% when the law requires 33.3%. Why should my neighbors have to pay higher taxes than required just so a non-elected individual can control the county assessment process? Over the last 2 years, the county assessor raised assessments in Grays Lake 15%, Waukegan 28%, Zion 18%, Grant Township 17%, and Benton Township 11%, all while inflation has been at 4.2%, and Social Security payments have gone up less than 3%. That is unfair, blatantly unfair. Don't the voters of Lake County deserve the same opportunity to vote on this issue? And the answer is, of course, they do. An amendatory veto of SB 22544 will deny us the right to vote. Reject the chairman's resolution so all of us in Lake County can vote on this issue in November, and then we can have civil debate and let the majority rule. Please do not deny my neighbors and I the basic right of democracy, which is the right to vote.
Bill Morris from Grays Lake. Three minutes. I'll give you a warning at 1. Go ahead and start.
I'd like to talk about Lake County's dirty little secret here today. You know, we need the county board to be honest about this dirty little secret. Because the assessor is appointed by the county board, several townships in Lake County have been raised 2, 3, and 4 times the rate of inflation. That allows the county board to raise its property tax levy and shift the burden to those townships that had the higher assessments. You are part of the taxing process, and when you do that, you do hurt the people that I used to represent as mayor of Waukegan by raising their taxes. Right now, I believe this is really a conspiracy of sorts to make Mayor Cunningham look bad because he's taking all kinds of heat because taxes have gone up in Waukegan at a very time when the assessments went up and not necessarily the tax levy. I won't stand for it, and I don't think it's fair to him or the people of Waukegan to have this happen. The Lake County assessor should work for the taxpayers and not the board. We know the drill. You appoint him, you control him, you can help affect what the assessments he does are. Since 2013, you've raised your tax levy $10 million. And because of these giant increases in Waukegan and Zion and Grays Lake and Fox Lake, you're pushing that raised burden into those communities, which in fact does cause my neighbors and I to pay $200 to $300 more in taxes than we should. The Caroline North senior citizens deserve to be treated fairly, as do the residents of Lake County. The proposal by the chairman shows that we are raising some heat. The fire must be burning a bit. Now we're going to have a fake referendum that means nothing. That's always the way the Chicago machine operates. They put 3 items on the ballot that are not really valid so that the public thinks they're getting to vote on something that means nothing. So here we're going to take a binding referendum, yes or no on electing a county assessor, and instead we're going to put on a fake, how do you feel today referendum. This isn't Dr. Phil. This is our money. This is our taxes. How about giving us a break and do the right thing today? Thank you very much.
Richard Woodruff from Grays Lake.
My name is Richard Woodruff, and I'm a resident of Caroline North. I also have another property in Grays Lake, and I have a prepared statement to read here. The Lake County assessors applied double-digit assessment increases to 5 townships, 4 with substantial minority populations over the past 2 years, while inflation is less than 4%. By increasing Waukegan North, Chicago 28%, Zion 18%, Fox Lake 17.5%, Beach Park and Winthrop Harbor 11%, and Grays Lake and Round Lakes 15%, the county assessor is effectively shifting the county's tax burden to these communities. This is not only unfair, it is wrong. For 2 years, the county assessor has raised the Caroline North townhome owners above the legally required 33.3%. This year to nearly 37%. And yet even when presented evidence of the overassessment of senior citizens on fixed income, the county assessor refused to make an adjustment, forcing over 200 senior citizens to file individual complaints. No wonder Lake County gets nearly 18,000 challenges annually. That's 3 times more than any of the other collar counties combined. Please reject the chairman's resolution, item 44, and allow the governor to sign SB 2544, so we, the voters in Lake County, can decide if we want an elected assessor or not. Thank you.
Yvonne D'Agostino from Grays Lake.
Many of my comments were already made, so just please reject the chairman's resolution and allow the governor to sign SB 2544 so we, the voters in Lake County, can decide if we want an elected assessor or not. Thank you.
Sandra Hill from Grays Lake. Sandra Hill. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Sandra Hill, and I am also a resident of Caroline North. A couple of things I want to say is, since 2013, the combined Social Security increase has averaged less than 77%, and yet the Lake County Board has raised its property tax levy approximately twice that rate. Do you know that the senior citizens received no Social Security increase in 2015 and only less than 3% in 2016? And yet, Lake County asked for millions of more from us. Your levy increases combined with the assessors over-assessing Caroline North by 11% this year, above it, forcing Caroline North senior citizens on fixed incomes to shoulder a greater portion of the Lake County taxes than other areas. Please reject the chairman's resolution on item 44 and allow us to vote on appointing the assessors. It's time you control your levies and your spending. Thank you very much.
And now did Susan Malter from Lincolnshire already go? That one went? Susan Malter?
She spoke.
You did? All right, then Susan Warter,
Oh, that's
W-A-R-T-E-R
the
from Grays
confusion.
Lake. All right, let's make sure. That's all right, I apologize. You've got,
I heard it, and let me not take any
okay.
more time.
You
I'm
got your 3
Susie
minutes.
Warder from Grays Lake. My neighbors and I, you've been hearing from them. You've heard about our double-digit increases of assessments. Last year, the assessor gave an across-the-board rollback. This year, that didn't happen. We had a 37% increase assessment, and that means that over 200 individuals, senior citizens, me, has to go through the approval, individual appeal process. This is taking time and money, as was your chairman did refer to. We know that we've heard that there are, in Lake County, we are being picked on. And it is the communities of Waukegan, Fox Lake, Zion, Winthrop Harbor, Grays Lake, and Round Lake. We're paying a higher percentage share in our property taxes if we're overassessed. And it's just simply unfair and unresponsive. We know the chair's proposal to ask the government to use his amendatory veto of Senate Bill 2544 is just a political disguise to kill the Lake County's right to vote. The county board should really be passing, as your chair alluded to, should be passing a resolution urging the governor to sign Senate Bill 2544 immediately, so we do have the right to vote in November. If he uses the mandatory vote, it won't even come up. We don't care about other counties. We care about Lake County in Illinois. If they want to have a referendum electing their assessor, that's fine with us. But don't hide behind the fact that Senate Bill 2544 covers only Lake County and is an excuse to ask the governor to effectively kill our chance to vote. The reality is something is wrong with the county assessor's office. We have heard before there are nearly 18,000 appeals annually. This is 3 times higher than the collar counties surrounding us. This just isn't right. I ask you to stand up and vote for the taxpayers in Lake County and vote no on the chairman's resolution requesting an amendatory veto. I thank you for your time.
And Dick Barr from Round Lake Beach. You have 3 minutes. I'll give you a warning at 1.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Board. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman's covered a few of the points I've wanted to state, so I'll glance over that. But my name is Dick Barr. I live in Round Lake Beach, and I'm also a candidate for County Board in District 3.
And please, no comments.
Oh, I'm
on
sorry.
political.
I apologize.
Please stick to the resolution.
I've been following this elected assessor issue that has come to light in the past month, and I am a bit perplexed by it. So far what I've gathered is we have a rather fiscally insolvent state who has singled out our county, one of only 3 counties who maintain a perfect credit rating and a AAA bond rating, for an election year push to make Lake County more like Chicago. Now, I've heard some of these stories and very empathetic to them, and I'm 100% in favor of anything that's going to help alleviate our property tax burden. But I don't believe the elected assessor, having an elected assessor, does anything to alleviate our property taxes. I've seen 0 savings potential in electing our assessor. If we look at our neighboring county, Cook, and we see how their assessments work, I wouldn't quite call them equitable. I did a search yesterday on $1 million plus sales in Chicago over the past 6 months, and the first 13 that I came to had property taxes ranging from $5,000 to $13,000. Now, many of you in Grace Lake with $200,000 homes have way more than that, $13,000 to $16,000. An elected assessor who has to run a $250,000 campaign every 4 years, who might be beholden to donors, I don't think is in our residents' best interest. So I do hope you support the resolution for the amendatory veto, and I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
That concludes public comment. So we'll close public comment. If you could say your name at the microphone, please. You have 3 minutes.
I've heard comments from this board that elected officials should merely set policy and not have technical jobs, that being elected breeds corruption. I hope this board isn't suggesting any of the current elected Lake County officials are improperly influenced by elections, and I would point out that there are technical aspects of many Lake County officials. For instance, the county clerk, and both the current and past clerk have served admirably as far as I'm concerned. Many of you have stated you are not against allowing the voters to decide this, yet thousands stated that they do support this, and you're trying to kill the bill in a politically correct way so that you can shift blame to Governor Rauner, which may ultimately hurt him in the long run, because I'm not hearing of thousands of voters actively coming out in opposition. I would add that your voters care more about results and having a choice than the technical process that so offends many of you. Let other counties pursue their own solutions. You were elected to represent us in Lake County. You say that courts have validated Lake County's actions to overturn the lawful changes by township assessors, but this is not true, as the merits of the case have not been heard. It appears some board members speak out of both sides of their mouths. The chairman said he looked forward to credible, accurate assessment of state law, yet fought vigorously to get the case dismissed when we could possibly, at this very moment, have clarifications on disputes within the property tax code. Speaking to backroom dealings, under the current system, we had a large commercial property that was able to pay $1 million less in property taxes from a phone call to your appointed CCAO. They didn't have to file an appeal, provide any evidence. The township assessor who created the value was not notified and was unable to provide any input. Taxing bodies have to be notified of $100,000 reduction requests, but we're not notified of this $11 million assessed, $33 million market value reduction, and we're unable to intervene. To make matters worse, the decision was put through as an assessor reduction, so there was no hearing on the matter, and it was merely rubber stamped. You and your taxpayers paid more because of this.
1 minute.
So when you foolishly say the CCAO has no control whatsoever on what you pay in taxes, just remember this one phone call that saved $1 million that everyone in this room had to cover. Our locally elected township assessors are fighting to do their jobs according to state statute to ensure fair tax bills, but the appointed Lake County assessment officer is overriding those changes. Remember, when one person pays less, Everyone else pays more to pick up that difference. This is why fair assessments are vital to a fair tax bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for the record, that was
Now,
John Barrington from Hawthorne Woods.
Okay, thank you. And now we will conclude public comment. I'm not seeing anybody that seeks, all right. You know, I will open up to board discussion. I will just say that everybody is entitled to their own opinion, but you're not always entitled to your own facts. In fact, you know, I have a problem with the issues that specifically speak to integrity and the service of public servants, especially those that work for us in public office, our county administrator, our professional staff. We were the first county in Illinois to have a professional, not a political, county manager, county administrator. And so I think, you know, I've heard these attacks on the chief county assessment officer's integrity and allegations of potentially illegal or unethical activity. And I've immediately referred those individuals to go to the state's attorney's office to report such allegations. And I've never seen follow-up that they did. And so I think that it's important that we start the discussion there. The board has had such a respectful and thorough discussion on this, and I would entertain any discussion from board members. Member Frank.
Thank you, Chairman Lawler. Thank you for allowing us to discuss this issue through our committee process. I think we make better decisions when we hear from the community on issues. You stated many times that you have the authority to declare the county's position on your own without a board resolution. But I think it's far better that we run it through our process as you chose to do. So thank you again for allowing the committees to weigh in and bringing the issue to the full board. I don't support this resolution because I think Senate Bill 2544 does give voters an opportunity to say if they want to directly elect the county assessor or not. And I don't think we should be standing in the way of voters having that opportunity. My support for the legislation has nothing to do with the current assessor, nor any past disputes between the township and the county. I'm not looking backwards, I'm trying to look forwards with this. I think that we have an opportunity to directly elect the assessor. It will improve our opportunity to move forward with consolidation of the assessor function, something that this board has discussed extensively in the past. I don't think this resolution that's before us today helps us improve transparency or accountability. I think it's somewhat of a diversion. I know I've heard you speak extensively, Mr. Chairman, about the process in Springfield and the games that are played there. But this resolution is asking the governor to apply this bill to 60 other counties who perhaps have not had the same debate that we've been having here since mid-May. I'm not sure how many of those other county chairmen you've spoken to or where they stand. Is it appropriate for us as a county board to take a position saying that we want this legislation to apply to those other counties? I don't think it is. I don't think we have that right. I don't think we have that authority. So I think it would be simpler, honestly, if the resolution simply said that the county board wanted the governor to veto the bill outright, rather than to play games with the amendatory veto, which is effectively killing the bill. So thanks for consideration of my views, and thank you again for the process, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I would just remind, you know, we work over the summer. The legislature can certainly work over the summer. It's part of their process that they can call the session back into Springfield. I want to remind the board that this was passed on the order of concurrence, which I realize is a technical issue, but sending a bill that's about local government consolidation from one chamber to the other, from the Senate to the House, stripping it of all of its language, and then replacing it with the language that we have seen in 2544 now, and then sending it back to the Senate for an up or down vote without the opportunity to amend is not exactly a fair process. It's a legal process. It's part of their process. It's the way Springfield works. This board has really chosen not to be like that, and I think that saying that we want to improve the bill or offer suggestions or amendments to the bill, like we did with the small cell bill that we just considered an ordinance on, is a thoughtful way to engage. I think that's how we've always tried to engage with legislation, not just to always be, you know, a hard yes or no, but to be thoughtful and technical. So I would just offer that. Member Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm likely to ruffle a few feathers with this, but I like to call them as I see them. I'd like to address the legislation itself as well as the motivation behind it. This whole affair is a direct result of one state rep who took a poll and decided that property taxes are a wedge issue that he could use to make himself look good. He has taken in and used many good, dedicated, honest people for his own personal political benefit. This is sponsored, as been pointed out, by 2 state reps whose avowed purpose is to abolish townships. I wonder how many townships assessors will come up here and support that. Be careful what you wish for. It's been suggested that the collar counties all do it differently. I would suggest that they should follow our lead instead of the other way around. This will not result in lower taxes. The only way to materially affect property tax reduction is reform of the way schools are funded in this failing state. Anyone who says any different is either being disingenuous or dishonest. If, as this measure implies, the assessor could affect your taxes, and this position is made into a countywide office, which is very expensive to campaign for and win, what could go wrong? Anyone who feels that an elected assessor would lower their taxes, I would say, is very optimistic, and I think it's a false hope. As you pointed out, this is special legislation that targets Lake County specifically. This has been tried twice before and failed both times. It will fail again. But by that time, the political advantage will have been gained by this particular state representative. Last point. I find it somewhat ironic that the legislature of the worst-run state in this nation continues to interfere in the affairs of a county government that actually does its job. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Hart.
Thank you. It's kind of good timing to go after Member Carlson, because while this bill was introduced by one individual, it was co-sponsored by someone from the opposite party. So it was introduced by Representative Yingling, who is a Democrat, co-sponsored by Representative McSweeney, who is a Republican, and this bill was passed with bipartisan support, perhaps a supermajority, I'm not sure, in the Illinois House and Senate. And in Lake County, it was supported by McSweeney, by Jessel, Yingling, Senti, Drury, Mayfield, and Carroll in the House, and Senator Altoff, Link, and Morrison in the Senate. So that is bipartisan support by our representatives here in Lake County. At Committee of the Whole, it was stated a number of times that there was an illogical rationale for this bill about property tax relief. And what I have really read and heard repeatedly is that this bill is about giving voters via referendum the ability to determine whether they want an elected chief county assessment officer, which would, in that opinion and that view, would increase accountability and transparency. And I think what happened in Cook County was a good thing. The voters took advantage of their power when they voted for Kagi over Berrios in the March primary. I do want to state, we've been talking about how maybe putting money into somebody running for this office would have negative effects. And I guess I would say just because this position would be elected, I don't think that that means that they would be influenced by campaign contributions. And I am concerned that I think that's really kind of offensive. We are elected. We have, there are several countywide elected positions, and I would never state that that impedes anyone of our ability to do our job in a fair and ethical manner, nor would I say that that impacts anybody who currently holds a countywide elected office, that they are not fair and impartial and ethical. So I just want to be very careful about that. And lastly, I do not view this as a referendum on the work of Marty Paulson. Perhaps some others do. I do not. If this referendum were to pass, Marty could choose to run for office. And as a member of this board, I do support giving the voters a choice on Election Day, and I'll be voting against this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Bartels.
Yes, I'm
I'm concerned about the way that citizens have been given, inadvertently or advertently, the belief that this is a tax bill. It's really less about the election, and all the conversation is really about lowering property taxes. And that's an issue that is near and dear to everybody's heart, including mine. In the last 2 years, my taxes on the assessment, not the taxes, but the assessment has gone up 10%, 6.2 and 3.7 or 3.5, whatever. I represent the constituency that includes Saddlebrook and Grand Dominion. Saddlebrook is billed for their property taxes indirectly through their maintenance of their homes. Grand Dominion is a part of the city or village of Mundelein, and our assessments, the bills that come from the school, from the village, from the township, from the county, from the forest preserve, all of those are, including the villages I mentioned, all of those have been raised twice. And I want to tell you, I'm not happy, my neighbors are not happy, but it has little to do with the 3.2% or 3.5% that just came through the property taxes, because everybody had to have that change in the township according to state law. And in committee, I mentioned, I'll mention it again, a little brochure called P-Tax, that's P as in Peter Tax 1004. And in that, in the glossary, you'll find a lot of these issues covered, much less going back to, I think it's section 3 till 6, where you'll find how the process is defined and what the role of the top assessor, called by different names, what that role is. And in particular, if you look at an elected assessor, it says that that assessor, he or she, is the primary value setter for the homes. So rather than have the value for your home, the assessment for your home set by somebody in the township, it's going to be set at a county level by that elected assessor. That's in a glossary. So I'm not telling you what the particular law is. I merely try to tell you about the booklet, and that the taxes and the tax process for property taxes is defined. Secondly, the point is, I hate property taxes raising too, but I and others like our schools, but I don't like them 70% of my tax bill, nor do my neighbors immediately, because they have no kids in school, and there's an argument to be made that they shouldn't be paying taxes. Some of them finally get it, that it's a support the schools because they supported us and so on. I think changing this position can be a great idea, only to get people to go out and vote for what they believe. I don't think the change is going to do us, you, me, whoever, any good in terms of property taxes. You really have to take that fight to the entities that are in your consolidated election, and almost nobody votes in a consolidated election. If you voted there, you could control the boards, who could control the budgets. My last point is, I think, unfortunately, because you've been sold this as a tax bill, it's as if we said, let's hire the coroner, because we'll have fewer automobile accident deaths if we have a different coroner. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Member Martini.
Discussion here today, and I appreciate the residents that have shown up to voice their concerns, and I can only imagine the 53,000 taxpayers, how they feel. And Lake County, we're number one, I repeat, number one in the whole United States, in the top, excuse me, not number one, top 1% of the whole United States in taxes. And it's an issue. And we have to quit pointing fingers at each other and figure out a solution. And what can the county board do to address that issue? This referendum, if placed on the ballot, just gives the people the right to decide if they want an elected or appointed chief county assessor. In our recent telethon, or teletown sessions, and Aaron, you spoke very elegantly at the, on the phone, and those surveyed, 44% of the people surveyed were in support of an elected assessor, whereas 27% were against it. So I believe the will of the people are there and they want the right to vote. I mean, I could get into all this other stuff about the chief county assessor, but I believe that that discussion, I'm hoping, will be at a different time, because we need to settle that. We need to get that Attorney General's opinion and put a stop to the senseless appeals and the expense that our taxpayers are being forced to pay when 75% of those claims that go to PTAP are settled before they even get to the hearing. And something's wrong with that we have so many people that are forced to contest their taxes. So I'm hoping that this board will support the will of the people and let them decide if they want an elected or appointed. We can say, well, we're being singled out because we're Lake County and we have AAA bond rating. Yes, we do, and we're very proud of that, and we're proud about our ethics and our standards. But Houston, we got a problem here in Lake County, and we have to address that problem and quit pointing our fingers at each other, because the problem is not going to go away unless we address it. So I'm asking you to support this legislation. I believe I'm in the minority here, but I believe democracy works best when we involve the public. And it's just an issue to allow the people the right to vote. If they want the buck to stop at the elected assessor, chief county assessor. And that's all it is. I mean, we can say we want to drag in these other counties and ask for the governor to amend this legislation. Well, let's do the same then if we're looking at legislation to do a countywide chairman. What about the other 93 counties in the state of Illinois that don't have an elected chairman? Let's talk about that too. I mean, there's a lot of issues that we could be talking about that we have not been, but we're starting to. But this one issue with the taxes, I think that we should allow the people the right to vote.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that when I hear members of the public talk about taxes, I feel I feel the pain. I think we all do, because it's a complicated process. But I think as board members, we're a little bit more familiar with the process, and I think that to single out Lake County and say that we are in the top 1% of taxes, it's important for us to recognize a few things, that we all have a role to play, and that this county board has really worked hard, I think, in the area of consolidation, including 911 dispatch consolidation, the greatest single savings we're looking at. We're looking at reforms, as Member Martini alluded to, and those reform discussions are ongoing. They've been prioritized by the Government Reform Implementation Committee. To think that things like gerrymandering or whatever don't impact your tax bill, they do. Because at the end of the day, politicians that draw districts that pick their voters certainly has an impact. We're the only county in Illinois looking at those reforms. And so I think it's important for us to look at, we own 7% of the tax bill at the county, 3% at the forest preserve. That other 90% is elected by the people that vote in the April ballot. And it's all controlled by a process that is set in Springfield, not here. So to play on analogies, we are shooting the messenger here instead of solving the message or improving the message. Member Maine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question first. Has the bill actually been sent to the governor yet?
It has. It was sent on the 29th, and he has
Okay,
60 days
so
to
he's
sign
60
or
days.
act on it.
All right, thank you. So my comments have been fairly narrow on this, and I haven't impugned anyone's motives, whether they're in this room, whether they're in another legislative body, and I don't intend to start impugning people's motives today. I would ask for that same consideration from others. Voters want the choice to have an elected CCAO, and I'm fine with that. I don't see a problem with that. But as you said, Mr. Chairman, when we stand up and are sworn in, we say that we're going to support the Constitution of the state of Illinois and of the United States. And this is special legislation. It actually names Lake County. It didn't go a roundabout way of saying a county that borders a large body of water, navigable water, and a state to the north, all right? So it did name it. There was the ability to make the legislation broader, and that is what the law is about. Somebody brought up special legislation about the Lakes Sanitary District. Well, there aren't other lakes sanitary districts around to consolidate with. So in that case, it did need to be specific because there was not a broader law that applied in that situation. So the proposed bill, SB 2544, as it's written, if it were to be signed by the governor, and it were to be passed in a referendum this November, would have the chief county assessor elected in 2020. So I do just want to make that clear that there is nothing that would change for 2 years, all right? So that's that. So I think that's a really important point to keep in mind because we're kind of acting as if this November is the end all and be all. And it's not the end all and be all. There is another election, scheduled election, the consolidated elections, the municipal ones, in spring of 2019. So if this body passes an a request to the governor to do an amendatory veto, if the governor does that, whether or not the legislature in Springfield convenes again in the summer or not is immaterial because they have the ability to recreate. I don't know what the timing on that or if they could just create a new bill that would address our issues, because this is how it's playing out, to include other counties, but also importantly to make sure that the powers that the elected chief county official would have would be commensurate with those powers that other chief county elected officials have. So there could be a binding referendum in April, all right, which actually would be kind of fitting. People say, oh, well, not so many people vote then. Well, maybe this is a trigger issue. This is when your school board, your mayor, your township officials, all sorts of other things are elected then. You know, so it could still be passed then, and you could still have an elected chief county assessor in 2020, no later than what we're talking about right now. So there's, to me, no harm, no foul. I think it is incumbent upon us to ask the governor to go back to the legislature, because that's our only recourse at this moment to get what we think is improved because of, it was done all legally, that's fine. This is our only recourse. So this is the recourse I think we should do. We should ask that, and then they still have time to do it, and the citizens can still vote, and the process is not impeded because it wasn't going to take place in effect until 2020, so then it can still take place. And I think that would be great. That's all I have to say.
I thank you very much for your comments. You know, 90% of our tax bill is effectively on the ballot every odd year in April. The people we elect control 90% of that tax bill, yet I think our countywide turnout in the last April election was about 14%. So we all have a role to play as a body, you know, a state legislature, and we're certainly not trying to point the fingers. I think we're trying to improve the process. Member Weber.
Mr. Chairman, just so that we can clarify, we keep talking about the Constitution. So Article 4, Section 13 regards to special legislation in the Illinois State Constitution. The General Assembly shall pass no special or local law when a general law is or can be made applicable. So when you hear general, when we talk about the Constitution, that's what we're talking about. The one thing in Lake County that we've done is we go through a committee process. We identify a problem, just like in any other problem-solving process. So if the problem is that we don't like our assessments, is the problem that the assessments aren't fair? Is the problem that the assessments aren't leveled across the entire county of 18 individual township assessors? What is the problem? We need to identify the problem. Then we need to look at, well, how do we remedy those problems? I've never heard someone say the remedy to a problem is electing a new level of bureaucracy and having an elected official. That's not addressing the problem. It's addressing an instant need for satisfaction because you're upset with something. And I don't think anyone in this room is really wanting to say that people shouldn't have a vote. I think what we're saying is that the people in this room deserve to have the vote on something meaningful. And that's really, if you look at it, that's what we need to address, is what changes the way things are being done now. Because having an elected official doesn't mean you're going to get a different assessment. It doesn't. Doesn't mean that at all. If we think someone's doing something wrong, we need to look into that. I don't think any of us have any problem with that either. I think what Chairman Lawler had mentioned is, and someone else had mentioned here too, civil debate. That is not what was offered the county or Lake County residents, because no one knew this bill was coming. We did not have a chance to go down to address it through the legislative process, through the committee process. We didn't. No one even knew what it was about. We really couldn't even discuss it at our committee of a whole because no one had knew like anything about the bill. They hadn't researched it yet. So if you're really looking for change and you're looking for something that's going to be meaningful to address all your concerns, what we need to do is have it go through a process, have it go through something that's going to address the problems that you see. No one's happy with their assessments. Well, I suppose there may be someone out there. I have yet to run into them. I hold forums, where we help people learn how to appeal their property taxes. My assessor, Jeff Lee, and I have held, I think, 4 or 5 in the last 6 years that I've been elected on the county board. Because we care. Because sometimes even Jeff might make a mistake. And I consider Jeff one of the best assessors around. The fact of the matter is, just making something elected doesn't make it better. But we can make it better. If it would have went through a committee process, it could have been made better. Do we need to have more authority if we have an elected countywide? Does that position need to have the authority so that every township is following the same guidelines instead of 18 individuals doing it their way? I hope you can understand that. And it's not the fact that we don't want to give people a voice. I think we absolutely want to give people a voice, but we want to give them a strong voice, something that they can stand on with a foundation that will make a difference. So, anyway, I thank you.
Thank you. Member Danforth.
I would concur with the chair, and I would concur with Member Main, as well with Member Weber. You look at this, and we look at the special legislation. There's no doubt in my mind, as a litigating attorney, and reading the Constitution and reading this legislation, that this is special legislation. It singles out Lake County. It will be found, mark my words, unconstitutional. And we will have bought ourselves a lawsuit to show that it's unconstitutional at the great expense of the taxpayers. Had this legislation said something like it was applicable to the 60 other counties that have appointed county assessors, I would be all on board with it. So whenever we look at, and there was a kind woman that spoke earlier about, you don't care how things are done. Well, ma'am, I do care how things are done, because how we do things is often more important than what we do or why we do it. How we do the process, how we go through due process of law is very important. So when I see the legislature, for whatever political reasons it may have, to single out Lake County and say, this is what you, Lake County, are going to do. Nobody else that goes through this process, just you, Lake County. It's unfair. It's unfair to everybody. And as an elected official who swore an oath to the Constitution of the state of Illinois, I take that very seriously. So when I know right out of hat that the legislation is unconstitutional on its face, how can I support that in good conscience? Had it say, if it said, we're going to apply this to all the other 60 other counties, I'd be all in. In fact, I think that the county assessor should probably be elected, but it's how we get there. Today we had some township assessors that were here, and they spoke out as to wanting to support the legislation and support Bill 2544. I get that. I understand, I think, part of the reasons for doing that. Part of that is because they are elected by the people. They are township assessors who have been elected. And I think a lot of them feel that they have gotten short shrift when it comes to doing assessments or equalizations every year because the values of property change, and they are not being properly heard by the county assessor. If we have a process that is fair and open, and the township assessors are allowed to do what they're statutorily mandated to do as being elected township assessors, we may not have part of the problem that we currently have. And these are issues that need to be thoroughly examined. And I'm not looking to throw any individuals under the bus, but we've got a problem, it needs to be fixed. I get that. And I think part of having that township assessors in as the first line of defense on your taxes is an important part of this. But I will like to say this as well. I think a lot of the reasons for putting this forward today have been disingenuous. I think that we have been sold a bill of goods, and I think we've been sold a bill of goods for political reasons. Having an elected assessor is not going to change your taxes, okay? Because all the assessor does is, when we have this big pie of taxes, the assessor just determines how the pie is split up. The pie is determined by all the taxing bodies that levy the taxes on you and on me. They determine the pie, the assessor just splits the pie up. Okay, so the assessor isn't going to lower our taxes. Who's going to lower your taxes? Well, when you get as active citizens to your school boards and you lobby your school board, who is responsible for 70% of your taxes, that's where you get real change. Not from the nickels and dimes that the assessor is going to allocate. Because, again, it's just shifting the burden. It doesn't change the tax base. And you have to really remember that. So I do think it's a good idea to go through this process, but this went through the wrong process. As the chairman said, it went through a concurrence process. There was no vetting. It didn't go through the right subcommittees in Springfield. It just got done, cut out of whole cloth. And I see you shaking your head, sir, but I'm telling you, that's what happened. And it didn't go through the right process because there were no public hearings. It just was done out of thin air. And that wasn't a fair process. It was typical sausage making that gets done in Springfield. In essence, what we have here, folks, is we have the skin of the truth stuffed with a lie. And that's a sausage that this guy sitting in this chair isn't going to eat. Okay? I'm not going to do that. We have to look at why things are done. And I tell you what, if it's good enough for Lake County, it should be good enough for the 60 other counties in this state that also have appointed county assessors. Okay, let's make them all get elected. But don't single us out when we are probably the crown jewel of all counties in Lake County. Can we do better? Absolutely. But it needs to be fair, it needs to be open, and everybody needs to have a voice in this whole process. And that's why Springfield is broken, because they don't give you the voice when it really needs to be listened to. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Danforth wins analogy of the day, or metaphor of the day. Member Calabresa, then Member Werfel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say that in my 32 years of government experience on this board, this is the most blatant political power play I have ever seen. To single Lake County out in special legislation when it has already failed 2 other times, and to try it again, knowing full well this isn't really a legitimate way to do business by very experienced legislators. I have to look at the timing too. It just so happens this very quick process out of Springfield happens right before the elections again. And people are talking about the process. We have had a professional county staff. We hire professional lobbyists to help us in Springfield. And normal legislation, and we're successful in promoting good new legislation like we did this year on an A Way Out program. We have a winner, we take it to Springfield, and we get it legislation to make it able to be a pilot program throughout Lake County. But how did that process work? The House and the Senate have special committees. They use their hearing, first, second, third hearing. Our staff, our elected officials are asked to go to Springfield and to testify and give good advice. Often we can influence the legislation to make it better for our residents, but that didn't happen this time. At the last minute, it comes through, as our chairman so eloquently explained, and there was none of that give and take to try and make this process better. So I'm just asking that we ask for this veto so that we can perhaps continue our very open processes here. We have stood for the highest political standards. We hire the best and brightest staff we could get our hands on. We have some of the best ethical ordinances in the state. We adhere to those. We try to be transparent. We win awards for our transparency, for our open website. We are working the hardest we possibly can to make sure we give you the best services we can with the least amount of money. We will continue to do it. There are so few counties in the entire state with a AAA bond rating, and we have a state that has billions of dollars of unfunded, unpaid bills, billions of dollars of unpaid pensions, and we should listen and follow the way they do business. Please respect our board and our administrators, staff, and the thousands of employees who are trying their very best in a very open manner to serve you as well as they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Werfel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. I want to thank so many of my constituents who are in the audience in today's meeting for coming out both to this meeting and to the earlier committee meetings where we discussed this. And I've had a lot of conversations with residents in Caroline North and the general Grays Lake area, which of course I live there too, and I represent you in County Board District 6. So it's been very helpful from that standpoint. I don't want to belabor a lot of the points that have already been made here. Similar to what I mentioned in our committee meetings a few weeks ago, which some of you attended, I do just want to say that the biggest issue here when we talk about having a real impact on property taxes is essentially the state funding formula for local government, particularly our schools. You know, the elephant in the room, or the big problem, is basically how Illinois gets the majority of its tax revenue to fund local government, and it comes from these incredibly onerous property taxes that we are all forced to pay, and we're really only one of a handful of states in the country that rely so heavily on property taxes for doing this. And most of those states are in pretty bad financial shape, just like Illinois is. We're like ranked 50th. We've got the greatest number of people that are, quote, voting with their feet by leaving the state. And it's arguable, of course, that the biggest reason they're leaving this state is because of this. It's because of this property tax burden, which we here in Lake County feel so greatly. with that all said, the sponsor of the bill, Representative Yingling, my entire county board district is within his entire Illinois House district, so all of our constituents are the same, they're shared. And just a few months ago in the spring, Representative Yingling had a neighborhood meeting in Wildwood with our shared constituents, and in that particular neighborhood meeting, he very directly and honestly and eloquently, quite frankly, stated that the only way that our property taxes are going to, stop increasing so greatly, or possibly even, or plateau, or even possibly decrease, is going to be through fundamental reform of the state funding formula down in Springfield, where the money comes from, essentially. It's just so much of the money for local government, again, particularly schools, just cannot come from these regressive property taxes that drive our people out. So, coming out of that meeting, I was like, yeah, like I said, he was very eloquent, and what I would, so he gets it, and what I would say is that I would suggest and strongly advocate for our state representatives and our state senators, folks such as that, to put their energy into that effort. You've already heard some stories just sitting in this meeting today where we as a body have to vote on certain things that if it was our choice, we probably wouldn't be voting for. The right-of-way issue for telecommunication infrastructure. So there are a ton of things that come from the state, from Springfield, that are legislated at that level, and basically we have to just react to or accept and make the best of a bad situation, so to say. And when we talk about this, about taxes and the funding of local government, that's what this body and other local government bodies are doing. They're trying to make the best of like a bad situation structurally. I would love to see our state reps and our state senators put the amount of effort into making that kind of fundamental change at our state level, which would have a real impact on our lives and make a positive impact on this crushing tax burden that we all feel. So I'll say for my constituents that are here from Carolina North, just specifically to this issue of the assessments, I've become familiar and learned a lot about it over the past month now, so that's been very helpful. I have spoken with the Chief Assessment Office, and I did want to communicate to you all that it is the intent of the Chief Assessor's Office to look at the assessments in the neighborhood in Carolina North specifically, and to do to look at it and to see about making an adjustment along the lines that you are talking about. What came out a few weeks ago, as you know, is the original request was that could you come as a group instead of, I know you don't want to hear this, but yeah, and I feel your pain too. Do the same thing. The individual appeals of assessments are a pain. It's another burden, and boy, it would be a lot easier if groups could come before the board of review and the chief county assessor to do their appeals.
Kind of dancing on the line of what's kind of related to the item, but yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
I just want to, but I do want to explain this with these folks. Anyway, statutorily, again, another statutory thing, which comes from the state ultimately, is not allowed to do that. Not allowed to do group appeals. Say your homeowners association representing you. So what I did want to say is that it is the intent to look at the neighborhood assessment overall as a group. Key thing for you all to do, and I know you don't want to hear this.
Member Werfel, I think we're veering off, and I know you care about your constituents, but I just want to keep it germane to this discussion, and certainly you can have a conversation. I apologize.
I would just recommend go ahead and do your individual assessments, and we'll see what we can do regarding this particular situation.
Thank you.
Outside outside of this larger issue.
Thank you very much.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to close discussion there and just close in saying, you know, this bill was introduced and passed in a week without much collaboration, but there was time to cut a cable ad that was up on Monday. There was time to launch a Facebook operation. There was time to make promises, as one senator from Lake County who didn't vote for the bill told me, you know, that I think they're the exact opposite of what we want in Lake County. We want an open and honest dialogue. We want to be able to put things before the voters that matter, and we want to be able to run for election without having to run with Speaker Madigan's money, which is what is funding those cable ads. And I think that this is an opportunity for us to say we want to be part of the solution. We want the state, instead of this kind of 1 week thing, we want them to work on our work comp laws, which resemble, instead of, you know, a reasonable legislation, it's like trip into cash. We want the state to work in meaningful funding reform, has been mentioned. All of these things feed into this incredibly complex process. And if it was easy, it would have been done already. But we're here, I think, today to say that this is an opportunity to put this before the voters. If people don't like my way that I'm proposing, Member Maine so eloquently raised, you know, an alternative that puts this before the voters and on a ballot where most of their tax bill is controlled and still has the same effective date. But I think that as I put in my chairman's report very intentionally, one of my favorite kind of figures in leadership, and this was something that was a video that was shared at the Forest Preserve Strategic Plan meeting several years ago. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and I would call for a roll call vote. Thank you.
Bartels. Calabresa. Aye. Carlson. Aye. Cunningham. Aye. Danforth. Aye. Durkin. Aye. Frank. No. Hart. No. Hewitt. Aye. Lawler.
Aye.
Maine. Aye. Martini. No. Matthias. Aye. Paxton. Aye. Peterson. Aye. Rummel. Aye. Weber. Warfel. Wilkie, oh, excuse me, I think he's not here. Wyatt.
Right, we have, I believe, 14 ayes. Motion carries. Thank you very much for the dialogue. Obviously, the discussion will be ongoing with the governor.